Get a view from ANC member and political analyst Oscar van Heerden and his view on how the president has handled corruption. Oscar, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. Well, given the political developments within the party, the letter of the president and the NEC endorsing that letter and his decision to really deal with the members in the party who are caught to be doing wrong, do you think we can believe the president when he say no wrong will go unpunished?
Absolutely. I do think we can believe him. He has been fairly consistent on this drive to root out corruption. Even though we might give him a low mark, I would venture to say 50%, simply because it's simply not true that nothing has been done. You know, I wrote recently about all manner of things that have been taking place over the last 2 years with regards to combating corruption. You know, it's a process. It's a process. And Ramaphosa, as we all know, came in on this ticket of wanting to clean up. And we all knew it was going to take time. I know people are desperate to see arrests and so forth. But there is an article recently, you know, an analysis, in fact, done by the economist and independent analyst J.P. Landman, where he outlines all the steps that has been happening over the last 2 years, including since Batoy came in at the NPA and so on. You know, when you want to deal with this animal called corruption, you have to start at the head. And so we all know that Cyril Ramaphosa, when he came in, once he had won the elections at Nazareth, the first step was to remove President Zuma, because that was indeed the apex of state capture and corruption, facilitated by the former president. And so that happened. Then the next thing was he needed to get rid of some of the obvious state capture culprits in the cabinet. He sent 10 of them packing. And then he started looking at the institutions, the NPA, SARS, and many, many others. And we had to then make sure that he brings in the right leader and the right leadership in those institutions. And then, of course, once that was in place, you now started looking at individual cases. And J.P. Landman really outlines a plethora of cases that has already been happening: arrests, forfeiture, assets that has been seized, and so on and so forth. So this narrative that nothing has happened is simply not true. There is still a lot that must happen. I accept that. And I am confident now that the NEC has also toed the line in terms of the president's letter. Sorry. Yeah. I'm sure that we are going to see action.
Now, Oscar, there's palpable anger, and I'm sure you're picking it up also in the messages and the Twitter messages, Facebook and voice notes that I am reading around his own situation around the political campaign to get him to the seat of presidency, and those bank statements and the money that was used allegedly for vote buying. It has not been proven, and that is the call by many that needs to be investigated by the Integrity Commission, but also the unsealing of those documents coming into the fore. You put that on the backdrop that, you know, is the president really been taken seriously by his very own? If you are seeing Kusela in his own office, right here next to the president, being caught up in PPE corruption scandal, deputy minister in the presidency also caught up in this kind of investigation. You go to the party, the sons of the SG being caught up in this type of thing. So these things are happening right around him. And people are saying, but, you know, there is this largely a focus on him as a leader and whether he is able to get his house in order.
Yeah, let's start with the campaign funds. You and I know it is commonplace since as early back as Polokwane in 2007. We saw a scenario where those that wanted to influence conference, ANC conference, vote buying, rigging, branches, and so forth. They steal from the public purse. They give certain characters tenders so that a slice of it can come to them, and they build up a war chest. This is exactly what the Zuma people did with the run-up to Nasrec. Literally stealing and building up a war chest from public money in order to influence conference. Now, the question you have to ask, if you want to oppose that, as is the case with Cyril Ramaphosa and his team, you have two options. Oh, well, three. One, you can fund your campaign yourself because it requires money for you to go around to provinces, to have mass rallies, to talk to people, to convince them that they must vote for you. If you don't have the money yourself, then your second option is to do exactly as these culprits, these thieves, and steal the money from the public purse so that you can combat them. Or the third option, which is the option that CR17 took, which is to say, let us go and see if we can find money elsewhere, outside of government, in order to be able to fight this fight.
So,
and that is
and that's the option that they went for. And it's not, the illegality, I suppose, does not lie in the fact that they went and looked for money. But the question becomes whether or not that money was given in lieu for certain favors. And are we seeing those people now getting contracts in government? Are we seeing those people now getting positions in our SOEs? Those people who made those contributions?
Well, I don't know about that, Ayanda. You know, that would have to be investigated where the favors were traded. What I do know is that the situation in the ANC as an organization has become so rotten that it is clear that there is money being used to influence outcomes of conferences. So the Integrity Commission will have to investigate that. But the fact of the matter is there is no point in wanting to point fingers at the president, because that is what has taken place within the ANC as an organization over a number of years. So that is why there's this call from all quarters that we need to renew, we must talk about membership, and so on and so forth, because everyone knows that this is how bad the situation has become. Yeah. So that must be investigated. But
let's talk quickly before we run out of time about the ones who are in his office implicated in this PPE scandal.
Yeah. So I simply wanted to address the issue of campaign money and where it was found. Nothing illegal about that. And as you know, those bank statements have already been tried and tested in the media and the likes. So I'm very confident that when he goes to the Integrity Commission, that will be fine. As to those people inside his office and so on, the truth of the matter is, Ayanda, that we know that there are corruption everywhere. This is why we voted for Cyril Ramaphosa, in order for him to go in and try and clean up. Now, the fact that there is people around him that has fallen prey to this is no surprise, because everyone wants to take shortcuts. The key issue is that the president has made it clear, whether you are next to me or whether you are far from me, if you are engaged in illegal activities, shortcuts in order to enrich yourselves and participate in corruption, then you must face the arm of the law, and prosecutions will have to follow. So whether it is DICO or anyone else, if it is so proven that these people are guilty, then the law must take its course.
Now, Oscar, if you ask a CEO of Ask Africa, Andre Rudemeyer, he'll tell you that 68% of the citizens, those who were asked, believed that there is now more corruption evident in South Africa as compared to previous years. Of course, it has got to do with the corruption around PPEs that we have seen. Would you agree with that sentiment?
I wouldn't agree with it for the simple reason, and this is not one of those things of two wrongs make a right, but I do want to put it into context, as we've seen an article written by Stephen Friedman recently, which is that you cannot actually make that statement because we have a more transparent, a more open government these days over the last 2 decades. To say that we've never seen this kind of corruption ever is simply not true, because we never actually had access and understood the real depth of corruption within the public service in previous years. So when people say this is the worst ever, no. I don't want to agree to a statement like that. What I can say is that we need to obviously stamp out corruption in all forms. The fact that we have what I call corona thieves, people who even steal in the midst of a pandemic, that shows you the depth of depravity that is prevalent within our society, and not only within the ANC. Not only within the ANC, because as Judge Squires many, many years ago told us, in order to have a corruptee, you must have a corrupter. So the private sector themselves have also abused the situation during the COVID during the COVID pandemic, hiking of prices, collusionary actions, and so forth. So corruption is endemic in our society, and we need to stamp it out in all forms.